Leather Company. Today I'm going to show you how to make a small pocket paddle. We have an order for a brown paddle, and I'm going to show you how to take it from step by step all the way through each process to the very end. So the next step is we're going to come to our pattern area where we have thousands of patterns and pull out the patterns. I make all my patterns out of a hard, heavy cardboard, so I can actually use nails and different things like that to mark the areas. So this is going to be our pattern that we're going to pull out to cut the leather. So I've taken the pattern and I've selected some of the pieces of leather we use. This is a stiffening piece that I pulled from the shelf and a piece of pig suede that we're going to glue together, which gives the backside piece of the paddle. So I'm going to take this piece of cardboard here and I'm going to lay it down on top of the piece, and I'm just going to give myself a rough cutout area so I can get the pieces glued together before I take it to the clicker and punch them out. So the next stage is, after rough cutting out the stiffener piece, I've applied some glue to it already to kind of save time on the video. And now I'm going to apply glue onto the pig suede, which is I'm making sure that the suede side is down, and I'm gluing onto the back of the suede itself. This is an important step. I use a really heavy duty industrial type of glue. It's a non-toxic glue, it's water-based, and allows it to have really good bonding. I use a glue pot here that keeps it available to work with pretty much all day and allows us to seal it off so it won't dry out. After getting a good coating of glue on both pieces, I want to make sure and have just a little bit of the glue wet when I'm putting it together. All glues have different principles. This one tends to bond better with it being applied a little bit wet versus already dry, like barge cement or some of the other industrial glues out there. So I'm going to apply these two pieces together, making sure that I'm getting the entire coverage on both pieces, so that when it dries I'm going to take it to the clicker and actually punch this part out. Okay. So next step is to select the leather. This particular paddle is brown. We have select pieces. I usually save scrap pieces for the smaller projects, so this is one that I think I have something smaller. This one should do it right here, and while the other piece was drying, we'll be taking these all to the clicker and punching the parts we need. So I'm going to grab the dies now. I have a couple of different dies in this particular project. We have one that we use to cut another secondary stiffener and also the main body piece. So the first one that we're going to cut is the main body piece. This is the suede piece, and we're going to lay that on top of the leather, kind of centering it to make sure we get over the edge. Then we're going to, I've already adjusted the machine so that it should potentially click out the part without having any leftover. Actually, it needs to be a little lower. And when I get a clean cut, I should end up with the size of the piece that we need for the back. Now I'm going to take the outside piece the same way, kind of pick a good area of the leather, avoiding scars or stuff like that unless you actually want that in there. And then again over the center of it, and I'm going to come down and punch it. Should get a clean cut, so I'll get two pieces exactly the size of the paddle that we're going to be making. Keep the scrap for another project, and then we're going to switch over to a different die, which is the inner stiffener in this particular project, which is a little bit smaller than the overall piece, and I need two of these to go on each side of the die. So I'm going to again bring this over the center and click out the part. Cardboard's a little stiffer, so it tends to make a little bit more noise in the machine. There's one, with a little bit more pressure, and always using as much material as possible to save from throwing scrap away. And there's our two parts, and we'll go to our next step. Okay, I'm making the hole markings for where we're going to tie a string on later. Now we're going to punch the holes where an eyelet's going to go for tying our string. Okay, now setting the eyelets in each piece separately. Now we're going to glue both the pieces and all the inserts, the steel piece that I've already pre-cut. I've got that drying. It usually takes a little longer, and we'll go ahead and continue gluing all these parts. Go ahead.
No,
Stop. Okay, now we're going to insert the steel pieces. I've already glued all the parts together, let them dry a little bit so they're secure. And this is important that the piece of steel is not going to interfere later with our stitching. So we have to really center it right down the middle of the handle, and it'll glue in place temporarily till I lay this other piece on. This is also pretty important because we have to make sure that all these components are going to line up, as well as the holes where later we're going to put our string. So I'm going to line them all up, and then I'm going to kind of give it a good press to make sure they all touch. And then I'm going to go through and make sure these line up on the edge and become symmetrical. While the glue's still damp, it'll actually bond. Okay. Now we're going to bring it to my machine. This is a little more heavy industrial machine, designed to stitch through a little bit more leather than just a wallet or something a little bit on that thinner basis. So I've already set the machine, so it should be pretty cooperative. Sometimes you have to readjust them. Setting the needle in first, dropping the foot, and hopefully we're going to get a good stitch length here around the eyelet. And then we're just going to stitch the perimeter around the paddle here. Important not to go too close to the edge because it'll go out the bottom. You can break a needle. Many different factors of in sewing, but this is going to give you the idea. As you can see, lots of hands-on steps throughout the whole process of this. Sewing is a lot easier looking than it is. I've been doing this 30 years, so I have quite a bit of practice in keeping a good edge and the right amount of pressure to keep a good stitch length. Go a little slower when we get to the end so we can lock the stitch in place. A couple of lock stitches and we're done. Okay, now we're going to take some sanding to the edge because we want to make all these edges nice and smooth. Okay, now we're going to take a number 2 edger, keeping them pretty sharp so it doesn't maul up the edge of the leather. And we're going to cut a little bit of the edge of the leather off, which helps after we've sanded it to give it more of a rounded edge when we go to paint it, as you'll see a little bit later. So now we're going to edge the side. I've kind of smoothed it out and rounded both edges. I'm going to use a dark brown. Usually I use a dark brown or a black, which will step forward in our next step, which is going to be where we burnish it. So we'll paint the edge all the way around, making sure to cover all those areas where we edged with the edger. I realized I had made a mistake. This paddle actually calls for black. I was thinking brown on brown, but this one, so I'm going to repaint black. Great thing about working with leather is there's always room to kind of clean up your mistakes, and so I'm going to actually paint this one black. I'm going to apply a little bit of wax to the edge. This is a burnishing wax that we used. It makes the edges nice and smooth. Blends those edges together with the paint as well. And after we've got the edge waxed, we will burnish it using the burnishing wheel you see behind me. And this will kind of heat it all up. Final stage after the edge is all nice and burnished. You can see it's nice and smooth now and has a good touch to it. So we're going to add the little hanging string from it, putting it through the eyelets that we had put in there previously. Bring the strings together equally, and it's kind of a little tricky technique I do here to tie it in place, keeping both strings kind of even as I do this process. Some people have a little hard time with this, but I think it looks better when the two strings kind of match equally. And then I'll kind of slowly cinch this knot down onto itself. And then once I've got that, then I'm going to come about 7 or 8 inches above it, and then I'm going to do that again, keeping both strings symmetrical to themselves, and doing the last knot up in here. You can leave the string longer or shorter, because it's always easy to rechange this knot into a longer piece. And then I'll usually cut off the little bit of extra so it's not too close to the end. Do a little bit of cleanup on it. It gets a little dusty in the sanding process. So the suede, that's why I use suede. It's real smooth and has a nice ability to clean up real nice by kind of brushing it out. After we've cleaned it up and it's looking nice, then we'll put it into a bag. And it's getting ready to ship to another satisfied Etsy customer. This is our small shipping area. Wish it was a little bigger, but print out the customer's orders. My signature I put on there is always to please leave a review and a smiley face. After the package is set, we put it on the scale here and get a weight. Then we'll go to the computer for our shipping label. The package is now sealed. It's got our label on it. The company to the customer usually send a brown bag or envelopes, and we will now put this up for our postman who comes to the shop daily and picks up any of our outgoing mail. Hope this clarifies some of the processes that we do in our shop. Cut out a lot of little steps in between. Generally when we make a few of these, we'll probably make 4 or 5, and then we'll keep them on the shelf. But I just wanted to give you the idea of one of the products that we make here, and each step that we go through. Again, we'll probably be doing another couple videos on some of our other products, and if you have any questions, you can always call us at the shop or email us. So thank you.